Everyone focuses on the final stretch of holes that you had with Bernhard, but they tend to forget that you were 2 up through 14. Did you feel you were playing well?
I was playing as well as I could at the time, let's put it that way. The holes that were giving me the most difficulty were the holes that would inevitably would be the left to right and sort of into us winds. I was not striking the ball real purely that week at any time. But what I was able to do was when we'd get going downwind, I could take my little deflections and play them just fine. But once we turned into that wind and it got a little more difficult for me to do that, versus, say, Bernhard, who was playing a nice little right to left, nice boring shot, he had this certain advantage playing into those into the wind, into those holes like that. And I felt like I perhaps had the advantage going downwind. So it was really, as it ended up, it was a seesaw contest, and I had felt like starting the day that I had to play those downwind holes better than he. And that's what happened. I was 2 up once we made the turn. If I could hold my own going on those outward holes and hold my own coming back in and just take the middle part of the course and play my best golf there, I might have a chance to win. And as it ended up, I didn't win, but it was close enough.
Coming down the final stretch of holes had to be one of the most pressure-packed moments in golf history. How did you compare the pressure of that compared to your major wins, like three U.S. Open?
The fact that you had, at that point in time, a team that had lost, a U.S. Ryder Cup team had lost the Ryder Cup more oftentimes than they had won it in the last 10 years. I think there was enough pressure on all of us, but it doesn't come down necessarily to just the win or lose. I think it's a pride thing. Each player, during the course of those matches, each team member had his own pride at stake, and I think that's what you find in any tournament. It's a player's pride that's really hanging out there on the line. And for all of us that got to play there, that is always the case, particularly so in a Ryder Cup, because you want to be the guy that surfaces. You want to be the guy that gets the team over the hump. You want to be the player that brought home the cup. And with that in mind, there's that additional pressure. Now, going into those matches, we all thought that it was a very, very even team. When Steve Pate got hurt prior to the matches, I think the balance went certainly in their favor, and our team had to play a little bit better than they, 11 on 12 if you wish, to have a good chance. And I think all of us got down in there, and Dave Stockton was very instrumental, I think, in guiding us through all that. And the players responded. When you have players like Payne Stewart and I know Mark Calcavecchia had a tough Sunday, but he played very well. And Chip Beck and those guys that played on that team really dug deep and played well.
Now on the par 5 16, a win would have won the cup. You hit a drive into the sand, had a layup, and had left you 188 yards to the flag. Hit the third shot over the green, then made a miraculous chip and a putt to save par. Bernhard was down the bunker. Mm-hmm. What were you thinking when he was hitting out?
Well, the shot he played from that bunker was just fantastic. I really didn't think he could get that up and down. Honestly, I thought that perhaps it was over right there, because his shot is a long one. He was up against the lip. But I think it just shows that you cannot ever count out a player of Bernhard Longer's stature. They're going to find a way. They're going to create a shot. They're going to bring forward all those talents they have, and he did. And he made some very nice putts, and that was one of those putts he made coming in that kept him in that match. But I think for one, I had to make my putt to tie him, but I, for one, thought perhaps this was the match, or this was the hole where we might be able to end it. And here we go on to 17.
Now that's what going to the next point is. He was supposedly a bad putter, but he sank 5 to 6 foot putts coming down 15, 16, and 17. I mean, for a guy with the yips, did you think he was going to make the putt on 18 after?
Well, to be very honest with you, I felt like somewhere along the line he was going to miss one of those. Even the best of putters are not going to make those kinds of putts time after time after time. Not to say that you won't, but the odds say you're not going to. But what I had told my team members, I had probably had the advantage, if you want to call it that I had come in and played the course a time or two more so than any of my other team members. And my son was here with me on one occasion, and we played. I played with Pete Dye. I just wanted to get a better look at it. And, being the old guy on the team, I kind of wanted to make sure that I held my weight. And I recall the one thing I gleaned from those practice rounds that I had played was that the grain on the 18th green was stronger from back to front than it was on any other course on the golf, or any other hole on the golf course. And I remember telling the players that during a team meeting. I said, if you get to 18, just beware of the fact that that grain is stronger for whatever reason it is. And I remember standing watching him putt and thinking, I hope he doesn't know what I know. Not that I'm wishing him to miss it, but I just don't think he knows, because he didn't have the advantage of being over here playing quite as frequently, and it was probably one of those local knowledge things that I had gleaned from the practice rounds I had played.
Par 3 17, the pivotal hole in the match is, tell us what happened during your run through there.
Well, coming off of 16 and going to 17, as we know, it's such a difficult shot. It was playing, I can't remember the exact yardage, but it was a 3-wood. Both for, he may have hit a 1-iron, I recall, but whatever it was, you just didn't have enough club, and the out certainly was off to the left, because if you flared it at all to the right, and I was hitting a lot of flares, believe me, so I felt like that was if I could get through that hole, then I had a good chance of. Well, there it was. If I could get through that hole, then we had the cup. If I could have tied that hole with him, we'd have had the cup. We would not have had to play 18 necessarily. And he had a shot out to the left, and it, while it wasn't a bad shot, it was certainly a shot understandable in those conditions. And I hit mine out to the left as well. And someone in the gallery, it appeared, had thrown my ball or thrown a ball onto the green. I knew it wasn't mine, but a lot of people thought it was. But I didn't hit a particularly bad chip shot. It was a difficult shot, and both Bernhard and I had similar length putts. He made his, and I missed mine to go all square for the match. But that really was as you say, a pivotal moment in the sense that it gave, really Bernhard did what he had to do. He had to win that hole to keep the hopes of the European team alive, and he did. And had I won it, then we would not necessarily have had to play that 18th hole.
Give us a rundown on 18.
Well, I don't think it's in this setting, can we really describe the amount of tension that there was in the air at the time? I was nervous. Flat out, I was nervous. I've been nervous before, but in a different kind of way. In the Open Championships and other tournament victories, yes, I was nervous. Bernhard was nervous, but those are the kind of things you look forward to in a career. You want to have those experiences. You want to see how you can deal with them. And I hit a drive that went up the left side, and it trickled into the gallery and perhaps hit somebody, because I was pretty far back. And my only real shot, again, was a fairway wood to the green, and I hit it out to the right because you just couldn't be short in the left bunkers. Now, that hole has changed from today to then, but at that time, it was a very difficult par 4, very difficult. And Bernhard had hit it just short of the green himself. And I pitched mine well short, and he pitched his up to that 6 feet left of the hole, and I did not hit a particularly good putt. In fact, I just sort of weaseled my way along the entire hole, and I just didn't play it well. And he didn't play it great either, but at least he had an opportunity to do something of significance. And we go back to our opening comments on that local knowledge, and it did. And he says he hit the putt right where he wanted to, and it showed that grain was just as strong there as it was anywhere on the golf course, and he did miss it on the low side.
Now, what did you take away from the event? I mean, did it affect the way you approached the game? I mean, did it help you with your mental preparation that you're never going to face that type of pressure before, so everything else is easy?
Never say never, right? The fact that we did get a team win, albeit a a hard-fought win. I clearly had the greatest respect in the world for Bernhard and how he handled that. And I say that simply because the next week I went to Germany and played with him over there, and he won that event. So it really didn't affect him. He was very stoic, very unemotional the way some of us were. Yes, he wanted to win, but he was able to put that behind him. And maybe the disappointment was easier to put aside than maybe the euphoria of winning, simply because we had not won the Cup a number of times. And just the way the whole week transpired, I think it was so good for the U.S. team. The only thing that bothered me a little bit was we were in the Gulf and the Gulf War, and the likening of this golf event to some sort of battles in the war I thought was very inappropriate, and I didn't like that. But at the same time, I took away from it that, yes, I got up the next morning. I was still breathing. I could still walk. It wasn't something that was going to change my life, but it was something that certainly changed the immediate history of the Ryder Cup, and it undoubtedly gave golf a very, very focal point in which to talk about, which we are now talking about some 16 years later.
Pete Dizenback 3 times to renovate the course. How does it compare now to what it was then?
Well, the biggest change is just in the maturity of the golf course. It's grown in. When we first played it, it was a very raw golf course. There's still some new plant materials in. It hadn't really seeded in the way it wanted to, but now it's very mature. There's certainly been some changes. Pete has gone in and refined some areas. Some of the bunkering is not quite as severe as it was. The flip side of that is that yes, those plants that were sparse then are not sparse now. They're big, tall, aggressive, grab your ball and eat it kind of plants. So this course very much is a course that you have to play position golf. You have to keep it in play. You must keep it in play. You drift off into the scrub and into the sand, you're just not going to play well. It's a wonderful match play golf course. We'll see what it's like as a medal play course. But Pete has a way of extracting not only the best shots from the players, but he reaches down inside your guts and he just twists and he turns and he makes you have to really gut it out.
Golf Digest named it America's toughest course. Do you agree? And how do you attack a course like this?
There's no battle plan here because the wind has such a bearing upon how you play this golf course. It can come from, when we were here in '91, the wind blew from 4 different directions throughout the week. So you tell me what's the wind going to blow like, and I'll tell you how I will play the first hole. You can't have a plan simply because there is no way to go out and predict. Today, as we speak, it's relatively calm for Kiawah. At the same time, that wind could come up just 5 miles an hour more, and because it's a thick wind, a heavy wind coming off the water, it makes those holes play that much longer. So as a player, I think you have to be very flexible. You can't say I'm going to hit a driver on this hole and a driver on that hole, I'm going to do this, because boy, the next day that plan can shift. So you have to be able to literally take a plan and put it aside and bring out the next one. You cannot go into it with a battle plan. It just won't work. Flexibility and imaginative. You have to be very imaginative to play a course like Kiawah. Any of the great courses, you have to put away that one plan of attack and have the lift and shift mentality to play them well.
I was trying to hold that in, I'm sorry.
You were sure wiggly over there for a while.
Oh boy, I didn't want to do that right in the middle of your range.
Okay.
A couple more here. How does the Ocean Course compare to other top major venues you've played?
Well, what's unique about the Ocean Course, it is the closest that we have that I've perhaps played, except with the exception of maybe some courses on Long Island, that is really a links golf course. Links defined by a golf course hard on the sea. This is right next to the Atlantic Ocean. To call a links course that's 10 miles or 100 miles inland a links course is stretching it. This one is influenced very much by the tide, very much by the wind, and very much by the lack of vertical dimension, such as trees. a lot of sand, a lot of dunes, a lot of that kind of an atmosphere, which you'll find, as we know in the links terminology of Ireland and Scotland and England, very much of a dunes kind of a golf course. So that's what we have here. Sand is very predominant. Wind is a big factor. Trees are not so much a factor. So target identification on these kind of courses is very critical. When you're looking out there and sometimes all you see is just kind of a lot of rolls and bumps, to be able to find what that target area is most important, versus a course, let's say, up in the Northeast, where you have a lot of big trees and it's well defined where you need to hit it. Not here. Second shots, your depth perception is not defined by anything around. You have to be right on your yardages. You have to be confident that is 152 yards. Sure doesn't look like it, so you have to have the confidence in the club selection to go ahead and commit to it. So there are some different ways that one must attack or retreat in one's preparation of playing a course like Kiawah.
In general, give us your impression of the resort and how it's changed and evolved since in '91.
Well, now from '91, there's probably as many homes as there are alligators. Back then, it was no homes, a lot of alligators. It's gone from, I think, very wild, very barren, to a quite exquisite resort now. Some beautiful homes. It has been properly so, I think, labeled as a very comfortable place in which to live, a very exciting place to live, exciting place to play golf, and I think that reputation is very well the defining time of Kiawah Island. You must like living near the ocean. You must like this kind of southern living. Who doesn't? Because it is very comfortable. At the same time, you're going to have to like your golf, like we see here at the ocean course, without that. Now, you don't have to go too far inland from here. There are other courses on Kiawah Island that aren't like the ocean course that you'll find much different. So I think you have a great mix of the golf element here on Kiawah Island, and the homes, the hospitality, the generosity of the people is exquisite.